Hi everyone, this is Yana Smakula for SimonsSTM.com. Welcome back for another Yippee for Yana video. In this episode, I have a fun encouragement card for you created with a STM set called Oh Shiitake. It's a fun little set that brought a smile to my face the minute I saw it. All supplies I'm using for this project are listed and linked in the video description below. This STM set is designed by Kathy Zielski, and it is really clever. There's a clever play on words, and you have some fun mushroom images. I encourage you to check out Kathy's video where she debuts this STM set. There's also a set of coordinating stencils to help you color these images. And there's also a set of coordinating dies to cut the mushrooms out. I'm going to use all of these products and I'll show you the difference between an ink blended mushroom and a colored mushroom so you can decide which one you want to do for your next project. I'm starting by stamping the images onto Neenah Solar White 80-pound cardstock. I'm first using Memento TUXEDO black ink. I will color some of these mushrooms using Copic markers or alcohol markers. To me, these look like a very easy and fun images to color, and I wanted to try coloring them using my Copics. I'm also stamping the same images using the Clair ink. This particular ink is not alcohol marker friendly, but it will work well for ink blending. Next, I have the Simons STM Positively Perfect Craft Tacky Mat, and this mat provides a very helpful surface for ink blending. I'm going to place my stamped image onto the mat and then place the stencil on top. Because the mat is tacky, the stencil grips onto it, and there's no need to tape it in place. I am, however, using just a little bit of tape to tape over the paper areas that I do not want to blend. I'm going to use two colors of ink from Simons STM. I have cranberry and brick. These are the positively saturated inks, and I'm going to ink blend my mushroom. Let me zoom in a little bit so you can kind of see the process a little bit better. I'm starting with a lighter color and I'm applying it all over the mushroom cap. I want to have a nice saturation of red. With that done, I'm switching to the darker red color. And I'm using a smaller blending brush to add the darker color onto the sides of the mushroom cap to create some shading. I love that there is a stencil included for these images because if you're not exactly a colorer, if you don't like to color your images, but you still like the look of colored images on your cards, you can easily add color to these mushrooms using these stencils. So there is a stencil for every mushroom. There's a separate section for the cap and for the leg. I think I'm naming the mushroom parts correctly. I'm not entirely sure, so please correct me in the comments if I am making a mistake. And you also have even a little detail section to add specks onto the mushroom cap. If you are, however, wanting to have white specks on the mushroom cap, you'll need to use a white Jelly Roll pen or some other sort of white coloring medium. For a cap, I'm using a warm gray color. This is Fawn by Simons STM, and again, I'm adding just a little bit of ink blending. I'm not adding a solid layer of color. Instead, I'm doing directional ink blending and just applying a little bit of that warm gray from the top under the cap and a little bit of the gray from the side to have some shading on the mushroom cap. Next, I'm using a white Jelly Roll pen and I'm coloring those white dots on the mushrooms. I should have waited for the ink to dry because as you can see, I add the white dots, but they're not exactly true white. So if you experience that, it helps to wait for the ink to dry before using a white pen over it. So this is one way to color the mushrooms by using the stencils. I wanted to try something different. I wanted to use my alcohol markers. So I pulled out my go-to Copic colors for coloring anything red. And here I'm starting by using R39. This is my darkest red. And I'm laying down the shadows. I'm just going to show you how I color one of the mushrooms because all the other mushrooms were colored in the exact same way. Next, I'm using R27. This is my medium red. And blending it all out using the R24, which is my light red. And this gives me a nice, vibrant red fly mushroom for my card. To color the space under the mushroom cap and the mushroom leg, I'm using warm grays, W5, W3, and W1 markers, and I'm just doing a little bit of a blend here. These are super easy to color. Next, to create the white specks, I'm using the opaque white coloring medium from Spellbinders and a small brush. This is a Ranger brush. It's number 2 brush, so it's small enough for me to add little tiny specks of white onto the mushroom, and I'm just adding the white where I have the dots stamped on the cap. I'm also coming in with smaller dots, and I'm adding them in between the dots that were stamped just to make my mushrooms a little bit more personal and a little different. You can add as little or as many specks as you want. Make sure you let all of these dry. This particular product, the Spatter White from Spellbinders, if you apply a heavy coat, it takes quite a bit of time to dry. Well, not too long. It's going to take like maybe, 10 minutes or 30 minutes, depending, again, on how big that little white spot is. But it's best to set it aside and let it dry, because if you don't let it dry, you'll see it in just a minute, you can mess it up when you cut your mushrooms out. So next, I use the coordinating dies and I cut these beauties out in my die cutting machine. And like I said, there are coordinating dies for all of these images, including the 4 of the larger sentiments, which is really awesome. I always love when there is a coordinating die to cut the sentiments out. And here you can see how I messed up one of the mushrooms. It basically pushed that white all over the colored area, and I tried to fix that using a red marker, the R24. It fixed that a little bit, but it did not make it perfect, and it did not eliminate the problem. I still used the mushroom, and I later fixed that mistake by using a little embellishment, and I'll show you that at the end of this video. I plan to have a little grid design. You guys know me, I love grids. So here I positioned 2 rows of mushrooms, 1 row at the top and 1 at the bottom, and I planned my sentiments. I had already stamped and cut out 1 sentiment that says Shiitake happens, and next I wanted to stamp hang in there above, and things will get better below the sentiment that I was planning to foam mount onto the card. I used the VersaClair ink for that part of the stamping. I already have foam adhesive added to the back of my mushrooms, and I'm just going to remove the backer and adhere those in place. I love to pop things up. No card of mine is ever made without foam adhesive, so of course I needed to add foam adhesive squares to the back of these. The foam adhesive that I'm using here, this is the regular thickness, but if you prefer your card to be thinner, you can use the thinner foam adhesive squares to have less dimension on this project. I then added the die cut sentiment. I also used foam adhesive for that. And to pop this panel up, this panel, by the way, was cut to 3 3/4 inches by 5 inches. I used the Simon Says Stamp white foam sheets. These are perfect for adding depth and dimension to your project, and I just cut mine slightly smaller than my panel. Next, I have a card base created from the Simon Says Stamp Schoolhouse Red cardstock, and I'm going to foam mount this panel in the center. All that's left to do now is add a couple of embellishments. I wasn't planning to add embellishments to the card, but because I had that little boo-boo with the white ink, I decided I needed to add a sequin there to cover that up. So I used the cottontail embellishment mix from Simon, and you'll see that I have a little sequin placed there. And then I added a bunch of sequins to the background. So this finishes my card featuring the Simon Says Stamp Oh Shiitake stamp set by Kathy Zilski. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you feel inspired to create. Thanks so much for spending time with me today. Love you guys, and I'll see you again next time.
Hi there, I'm Heidi, Simon's mama and founder at simonsaysstamp.com. Thank you so much for watching our video. If you like what you just saw, be sure to press the thumbs up and subscribe to see more great content.